How's it going, everyone? I'm Swayaway Steve, and today I want to teach you how to rebuild any 2.0 or 2.5 IFP monotube coilover. Your first step of rebuilding your shock would be removing the top hat of the coilover. What you want to do is you want to shove a rag in between here to avoid any scarring to your top cap or the top hat. Remove the bolt, the through bolt. Go ahead and remove this. Now you can take it over to your spring compressor and remove your spring. Next, we'll be compressing the spring to remove your lower spring perch. Once the spring is removed, what you're going to want to do is wipe down the shock, get all the sand, dirt off of it. Now that you got your shock rotated around, what you want to do is relieve the pressure with an Allen wrench on the Schrader core of the Schrader valve. Rotate your shock back around to remove your 3 Allen bolts on the dust cap here. Once you get your dust cap out of the way, you're going to push the sill head down. There's going to be a circlip right here. You're going to want to remove that. So push your sill head down, get a pick, remove your circlip there. Now we're able to remove the shaft from the shock body. If you put a rag around it, avoid getting oil on yourself, like so. Now we're able to remove the sill head there for the rebuild. Next, we're going to be draining the old shock oil out of the body. Now we're going to go ahead and remove your piston, internal piston, sill head, and dust cap. Now that the shock is done draining all the oil, we're going to go ahead and remove the Schrader core to be able to get that IFP, internal piston, out of the shock body. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the internal floating piston from the shock body. So the next step, if you're not leaking oil or any kind of dirt that you can see, if the top cap O-ring is not leaking, I wouldn't worry about it. Move forward and go ahead and rebuild the sill head, the IFP, and the rest of the shock. But today we're going to go ahead and put on our tool to remove that top cap to change that O-ring. So now I'm going to install our tool here that removes the top cap that threads right on the shock body. Now we're going to apply heat to loosen up the Loctite to break that loose. Once you apply some heat to the top cap, you're able to break it loose, the Loctite. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove our tool. Now that everything is clean, your next step would be removing the seal on the dust cap using your pick. Get that out of there. And your IFP, your internal floating piston, you can go ahead and remove the wear band. Any O-ring that you're able to squeeze off would help you out. The plan is to not scratch the inside of the groove there. If you get your pick and you accidentally scratch inside the groove, the oil will go around your scratch and right around that O-ring there. Same thing on the sill head. If you're able to squeeze any O-rings out of the oil gland there, that helps. Now my trick is to flip the sill head over upside down, use an angle pick like this to be able to rotate your poly pack and the O-ring after the DU right there out of its O-ring groove. Like so. Comes right out. Same thing, grab your poly pack, rotate your pick. It avoids any scratches inside the sill head there that can cause any damage. Go ahead, remove your top cap O-ring if needed, and clean all parts thoroughly. Now that we're on step 2, the shock is fully disassembled. You got all your parts here. After you remove your O-rings and seals on the IFP dust cap, as well as the piston and top cap, you're able to open up our rebuild kit. This is our standard rebuild kit right off our website. It's going to include more O-rings than you need. So it's going to have a kit that's going to be able to do a bypass shock as well as coilover. So you will have extra O-rings when you're done. If you keep your old O-rings nearby that you took off all your parts, you're able to match them up if you need to. So we're going to go ahead and dump out the O-rings. And you can lay it out. That way it helps you find what part you need. So right here, this Viton one is going to be your piston for your shaft O-ring. You can go ahead, stretch it on there. Try not to cut it anywhere. And you can put your wear band back on. Now that's ready to go. Next would be your seal cap here, or dust cap. You can go ahead and slide that in its little groove there. Pop it in. Now that's ready to go. Never able to do the seal head. So you have one O-ring, which is going to go on the outside. Then you're going to have your DU O-ring as well as your poly pack there. You want to apply a little bit of grease to all 3 of those. It's going to be the top groove right here. Go ahead and stretch that one on there. Get some more grease. Apply it on the O-ring here. That one's going to go right above that DU bearing. If you go from the bottom, should pop right in its home there. Add some grease to the poly pack. Make sure you have the right side down. The spot right there is going to go the groove down. Now the sill head's ready to go. Now you have your IFP O-ring. It's going to be the biggest O-ring in the kit. Apply a little bit of grease. Pop that guy on there. Get your wear band ready. Now you have your last O-ring here for a coilover, which is your top cap O-ring, the Viton. There you go. Now we're ready to put the shock together, which would be the stage 3. So now that you got all your O-rings and seals installed on your parts, you can grab your shaft. Make sure that there's no pits or scratches on your shaft. Inspect it really well. The thumb rule is if your fingernail can feel any kind of pitting or scratching, you would need to replace your shaft. But if everything looks good, you can go ahead and continue with the rebuild. You're going to want to put your dust cap on first. Then you're going to want to do your seal head as well. If you have an internal spacer, you'd want to install your internal spacer. And then you're ready for your valving. The side that has the big washer is your rate plate. You're going to want to install that. Then your piston. So your bleed screws on a 2.5 is always going to face down towards the seal head. As long as you stay organized when you take these apart, you should be good. Now you're ready for your rebound valving. And then your nut. Now we can take this over to the vise and tighten it up. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten up the valving and the piston onto the shaft. Cinch that down real good. Now we're going to move on to putting the top cap and the IFP on the shock body. Now we're going to go ahead and install my body clamp tool. Tighten up my tool here. Add a little bit of Loctite to the threads. Some red. Give it a quick little tightening here. Now the final step is putting the shock back together. Now a little trick here I'm going to show you with installing your IFP inside your monotube shock would be to remove your straighter valve, or you could relieve it by pressing in. I remove the straighter core. Install your IFP with the O-ring down, wear band up. What you want to do is you want to collapse the sill head, the stroke with the stroke completely collapsed like that, and then you're going to want to use the piston to push down your IFP to the O-ring of your sill heads. So go ahead and install your shaft. I'm pushing the IFP down. I'm going to go down to the O-ring right there. That's going to set your IFP within spec. Pull your shaft back out. Make sure you install your straighter core if you removed it like I did. And a little trick is if you set it 7/8 of an inch higher, that helps you when you push the sill head in. The displacement will put it within spec. Straighter core is installed. I'm going to use this T-handle right here to screw it into the IFP. So this method I just showed you will work for any IFP monotube shock. So after setting the depth of the stroke of your shock, it'll push the IFP right about there to your O-ring groove. So you want to measure the distance between where the oil seals and the bottom of the sill head. A 2.5 is going to be 7/8 of an inch. So what you want to do is you want to measure the depth of your IFP, which just says 7.5. Add 7/8 to that. You're going to want to pop it up 7/8 of an inch. That'll put me at 6 5/8. So we'll go ahead and pop this up to 6 5/8. Adjust if needed to. So after I popped it up 7/8 of an inch from that O-ring, because that's the displacement of the sill head where it seals, you're ready to pour some oil in here. Now we're going to go ahead and fill up the shock body about 1.5 inches or so from the top of the cylinder there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cycle any air in the valving in the piston. So you're going to go ahead and install the shaft. Now we're going to cycle the air out of the valving by slowly lifting the shaft up and down in the oil. You don't want to move the IFP. It's easily able to be moved. So nice and gentle. Remove some oil if you need to. I'll just cycle just about a few inches of the shaft. You can hit it with a torch just to get that last little bit of bubbles out of the way. Now we call this highest point. You're going to want the internal spacer or your valving, depending on your application of the shock, to be right under the top of the oil there. Have your oil to the snap ring groove. So if you need to adjust it, adjust your oil to the snap ring groove. I'm like I said, the valving or your internal spacer right at the top of your oil. Slide the seal head down so all the stroke is out of the shock. The only thing that's going to push down the IFP to put it into spec is the seal head there. That's why we popped it up 7/8 of an inch. Go ahead, push it down in. Now you're ready to go ahead and install your circlip. You want to clean this out really well. Any excess oil, you don't want to be able to have it coming dripping out thinking your shock's leaking. You're going to want to clean it out with shop air, compressed shop air, or some brake clean will also work. Now we're going to go ahead and slide the dust cap. Put your 3 Allen screws in there. Now this step is really important. You're going to want to collapse all the stroke of your shock and open the Schrader valve core. That way you're able to see if your IFP is set correctly. Now that we got the shock fully collapsed without the spring perch, that's a good sign. That means that IFP has enough room to travel down without it running into the top cap. Would cause it to blow up if you did it that way. So if it doesn't collapse all its stroke, you're gonna have to go ahead and redo it and reset it and just try it again. We're gonna go ahead and charge this particular shock with 200 PSI of nitrogen. Once all the rebound of the shaft stops, that's when you're charged up. Now we're gonna go ahead, install the spring. Go ahead and compress your spring. Make sure your bump stop slid down. Get your spring perch. Get your misalignment spacers back on there. Install the top hat in the right orientation as it came off. Make sure to torque the through bolt at 65 foot-pounds so it doesn't make any noise when it's going down the road. Thanks for watching today's rebuild. I'm Steve from Swayaway Shocks.